remembered as one of the greatest moments of this planet.
Mr. Scout. I know you're still weighing whether to return to Lumen. But the mark I've come to know is happy.
Hello, is anyone there? Is the board on? It's Marquez from Macro...
What you all did was one of the most painful moments in the history of this company.
What the hell?
But the four of you have become known as the face of Severance reform.
Okay, so we're not in trouble?
I don't think so. Milchick said we're famous.
All of us equally, or one of us is like the star?
Now if you feel that you can't go on.
So what the hell did you guys see up there?
It's not our world up there.
And your life is filled with much confusion.
My Audi's wife died a few years ago. Except the woman is Miss Casey.
So what are you gonna do?
I gotta get her out of here.
Mark, your Annie said she's alive.
This is obscene.
I just want to be sure.
And your world around is coming down.
Why did you do this? What is this all about?
Do you know something about Gemma?
Mark, there'll be no honeymoon ending for you.
The work will be remembered as one of the greatest moments of this planet.
You don't value them. You fear them. We fear no one.
I'm tightening the leash.
If we let this happen to Miss Casey, who's gonna step up when it happens to us?
Now. Goodbye, Marquez.
Wait!
My name is Miss Huang. It's my first day here as deputy manager. Mark W.
Why are you a child?
Because of when I was born.
What is up with the company? I imagine he had been there for a very long time before he made it to that rank. So yeah, I have always wondered, how exactly did Minnie Milchick even get the job to begin with? How did she end up here, being so young and being seemingly not even severed or anything like that? It is a strange position for someone so young to be in a very trusted and kind of classified position like that, because that is the severed floor at the end of the day. It's their most classified work. That's why they sever their employees to begin with.
And the workers there, you know, when they're informed of what the hierarchy is, I mean, where she fits into the hierarchy, she is allowed to, I mean, she issues orders and they're not to be questioned. Or, you know, when she tells Dylan to take a walk down the hallway, he doesn't have, he obeys immediately. You know, he might ask her questions as they're walking down the hall, but he's not saying, no, who are you, whatever. Yes. I mean, when you fit into that hierarchy, when you fit into that pecking order, you get the people below you are essentially completely compliant with whatever you say. And I mean, Milchick was able to do that with her, with Ms. Huang, by just basically saying, when he was done with the conversation was done. It's like, you focus on the mournful signage. I'm going to, go do this and that. It's like, oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
it's
the
super weird dynamic.
I think it was, what's the name of the guy that was giving the evaluation? That I didn't look that
Drummond, up. Mr. Drummond.
Okay.
And he's Frolic. He's the one that seems to be the frolic representation of the four tempers. We see he has a tattoo on his hand spelling frolic.
Okay. He somebody said, I can't remember if it was him or if it was Milchick that said, "Oh, the sudden and frigid events of the Ortbo."
Yeah.
The sudden and frigid events. It's like, really? That's a strange pairing of words. But no, I like it. It's very stilted, but it gives you an idea that there's a procedure, but it isn't. Their normal isn't our normal.
It's not our normal. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and it's always
definitely.
just that little bit off, just a few degrees off of true north, and I'm like, I just don't get it, man. It's cool, super cool, but it's like that is so weird, some of it.
It is. It does come off a little bit weird, and that's why I do kind of, and I am very intrigued, I guess, by the world that Severance is set in, where it seems like it's our world, but it's almost like a parallel version of our world, where it's similar but different in some ways. Technology has advanced much further in some areas and has halted in some other areas. You look at some of the cars and some of the technology, the way it's shaped, the way it's designed. A lot of the stuff looks straight out of the 70s and 80s. Some of the headphones that Milchick wears, some of their attire, like it's this weird blend of modern and past generations, kind of all compiled into this one specific look that is Severance, where you see plenty of familiarity, but you also see some stuff that's like, holy shit, this would look so weird in our world, kind of thing. And I like that intriguing world that they've kind of cultivated, and I do want to see more of the outside world and see like just how much have they thought up of this weird kind of amalgamation of all these different things that they're kind of throwing together to make the world of Severance. And it's a pretty interesting world that it's set in, very
Right.
sci-fi friendly.
Yeah, even when Helena was meeting with Drummond and Natalie at the very, very beginning of the episode, what was it? Oh, he said, also in this world, apparently the four tempers are treated almost as like a medical fact, like the four humors were in like the medieval times. Because he said, even after the events, whatever, your humors should be balanced, should return to balance, whatever, or your tempers should return to balance. Blah blah blah, and it's like, wait a minute. So clearly, that's treated as a serious, like, medical assessment, a medical terminology. That's what they're concerned about. The tempers returning to balance, not you're physically not going to die, all the different ways. So it's like, wow, strange, again, just something else going on there. But we also got an indicator that it's not completely divorced from our real world, because Bert talked about going to Milwaukee. So even though Kier doesn't exist, Kier, PE with a postcode somewhere in New Jersey, Milwaukee still exists in this world. So we're not quite,
not quite completely different. You got a lot of similarities. Like it's set on Earth, obviously, our Earth in our country, and then you see some of these other things that are a little bit different, like the whole 206 countries that Lumen is all across the world, where we don't even have 206 established sovereign countries on our planet. So I do think, it's a super similar world to ours, but it does feel like it's a kind of a little bit of an alternate version. It's not exactly our world, a little bit different. And again, I feel like that's very well reflected in the technology we see. Like, you look at all the headphones that Milchick wears. You look at every time he hooks in and connects to the board, you see that they're computers. They're very computers. Like, everything looks kind of dated, like it's kind of 70s, 80s style version, where some of the tech just isn't quite advanced. You don't see a whole lot of touch screens and stuff like that. So I do like the kind of mix that they have kind of cultivated here. And it has kind of come together to create a pretty intriguing world, I feel. And here we are, halfway through, guys. We are halfway through season 2. I can't believe season 2 is already halfway done. But then again, I look at all the content we've gotten, and we've gotten a lot. I feel like each episode has given us something pretty decent, where the plot's moving at a pretty good and steady pace. I don't feel like we've gotten really much of any filler really this season. I feel like every episode's been pretty good, but I do want to see what the back half of the season is going to bring. I definitely want to learn a little bit more about this testing room floor. What is down there? Obviously, what is Cold Harbor? The big question: what exactly is Mark working on? Why is it so important that he completes Cold Harbor? And even in this episode, we hear Drummond himself say that Mark S. completing the file of Cold Harbor will be noted as some of the greatest work in the history of our planet. So whatever they're working on, whatever Cold Harbor is, Lumen definitely seems to have a ton invested in it. So that's what I want to see. Where exactly is this whole Cold Harbor thing going to go? What is Mark really working on? And I guess as we go through the list, would love to hear from each and every one of you guys in the chat as well. Let's greet the awesome chat, shall we? What are you guys thinking? Here we are, halfway point of season 2. What were some of your favorite moments of the first half of the season? What were some of your favorite episodes? What were some of your least favorite moments of the first half of the season? Where are you guys? What are you guys thinking when it comes to Severance? Are you enjoying season 2? Are you not enjoying season 2? Sound off in the comments below. Let us know what you think. We got Captain Caldwell in the house. We got Wild Marjoram in the house as well. We got Steed in the building. What is up, Steed? Good to see you. We got Xavier in the house as well. What is up, Xavier? Good to see you, my friend. We got Dave L in the building. We got Joan R in the house as well. What is up, Joan R? We got Confirmation Bias in the building. Welcome, Confirmation Bias. Good to see you as well. I see my pal Ty Briggs is here. What is up, Ty? Always good to see you, my friend. I hope you are enjoying your evening. We got Fenrir in the building. What is up, Fenrir? Always good to see Fenrir. We got Kabbalah Sherry. What is up? Good to see you as well. We got FaZe in the building. What is up, FaZe? Always good to see you as well. We have the one and only, my awesome other co-host, PM Philosophy. The one, the only. You know her. You love her. Welcome, 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 PM. We got Danny Spanks in the house. What is up, Danny? Good to see you. Everyone is sleeping on all the water references. It's in Lumon's logo. And it is. I mean, Lumon does have that little water drop in their logo. Lumon also has that big water tower right near their building. And they even referenced the big water tower in the orientation video that we see earlier on in the beginning of the season, the one that Keanu Reeves was narrating. He specifically even talks to the water tower. And that has always been very interesting. What is it about the water tower? What is it about the water symbol? Why is that such an integral part of Lumon's logo and their kind of overall look? Because we haven't seen really anything to do with that in the actual plot of the show yet. So that is a good question. I'm not sure what it means. We got Susie in the house. What is up, Susie? Good to see you as well. Welcome, welcome, welcome. And again, welcome to everybody who is joining us here on this fine, fine Tuesday evening. I see Chris B there as well. I see Pam Jam in the house as well. What is up, Pam Jam? Good to see you. Welcome one, welcome all. Yeah, sound off, guys. Let us know. What did you think? Have you been enjoying the up until this point, have you been enjoying season 2? Are there any scenes that have been your favorite? Are there some scenes that have been your least favorite? Let us know. Sound off down below. But what about you, Raven? When you look back at the first half of season 2, do you have a favorite episode so far out of these first 4? Out of these first 5?
Oh man, you put me on the spot.
I'll tell you what. Not even a favorite episode. Do you have a favorite scene? I guess maybe, or a least favorite scene.
Oh man, I mean, I'm gonna jump the line and just say it has to be the scene where Irving's drowning Helena.
Like, okay.
Bring her back, Mr. Milchick. I'm gonna kill her. Yeah. How can you say no? How can that not be it? It was the peak. It was the peak of drama. I mean, for a scene that doesn't have a whole heck of a lot of wild action, that was the closest we'd gotten to action, right?
Yep.
Yeah, like Definitely. Lily DeValley says. Yes, do it, Seth.
Do it, Seth. Great line. Great line. It's hard to not pick that one, right? I mean, it is such a memorable episode. It's such a memorable kind of climactic scene that was already in a crazy episode to begin with, in a sense. So yeah, you get down to there and you see Irving kind of just doing his thing and you know, just completely putting his neck on the line here in order to bring Helly back. Just completely total self-sacrifice on his part, where he knew the end result was going to be bad, and he did it anyway. And he did it in just such a badass manner, I feel.
Yeah. Well, and they were hinting throughout the whole episode that he was suspicious of Helly. You know, Helly was never cruel. That what you said was cruel. Helly was never cruel. Yeah. And we got the hint that he was suspicious of Helena. But I mean, he's such a rule-following guy, such a by-the-book guy. We absolutely did not. I didn't see it coming. I didn't see him just grabbing her and just putting her in the water.
I did not have waterboarding on my bingo card for Severance, I must say.
Yeah, it was such a break of character. So, I mean, he might have been the first one where the ones in this episode have had minor twists or minor adjustments to their character, or maybe even like reversals of their character. That one for Irving was a complete 180. It's like, wow, what the heck is going on with Irving? Where he's, I mean, we knew he was glum about about losing Bert and whatnot, but I didn't see him like breaking like that, because any kind of again, it's one of those inter-office structure, one of the huge taboos. You never lay hands on a coworker, no matter what. I mean, that's your one-way ticket out the door. If any kind of, I mean, pretty much any workplace that's a workplace has a zero tolerance policy towards that kind of stuff.
Yeah, in any work setting, I mean, rule number one, you keep your hands to yourself. Absolutely. That's the surest fire way to get fired. Yeah, it was one thing I always enjoyed about John Turturro talking about this episode in particular, and how he references that the reason he got to this moment, the reason why he was so just mistrusting of Helly and why he knew something was off with her. He just couldn't get that night gardener comment out of his head. Why was a gardener out at night? What was he wearing? What was he doing? Did he have a vest, a luminescent vest? Like, I love everything about that. And then when you hear him talk about it, he talks about it in the sense of his Audi's training kicking into his innie and just giving him the instincts. So that's why I really want to learn more about Audi Irving. I know I've said this in the past, but I want to find out what kind of training does he have? What kind of training has Audi Irving been through that he has the necessary skills to identify a problem like that and neutralize it, in a sense? Because he did. He identified the problem and then he neutralized it himself. So I want to learn more about Audi Irving and what this quote-unquote training is, because this was a very different Irving that we saw in this episode. So different from the mild-mannered, completely loyal to Lumon Irving that we got in season 1.
Right. He lived and died by the handbook. I mean, even stuff as mundane as like replacing the photographs, the team photos and stuff. Very, there's a procedure for everything.
Very by the book, for sure. Yep. Very by the book. All right. Let's see what you guys are saying in the chat. The cloned MDR workers can't just be a one-off. That's going to be a plot point sooner or later. And I could see that definitely being a possibility as well. We see the weird, they call them shadow twins on the episode, the official designation for the shadow twins, the weird kind of clone, like weird copy twins that are standing there and pointing the way for our characters when they're going on this journey to Wolf's Hollow. And many have pointed out that we've actually seen one of these things before. And I actually talked a little bit about it in my review for that week, whereas I could have potentially thought that maybe there's a possibility that those things weren't clones, that they were actually 3D printed copies, 3D printed models that were just printed to, serve a very simple function, stand there and point. And some people have pointed out that we've seen one of these things already in the very first episode of season 1, when Mark is first getting back onto the Severance floor and he's running all around trying to find the wellness area to look for Miss Casey. We see that one point where he finally does get to wellness, and we see somebody standing in the hall that looks an awful lot like him, same suit, like you barely get to see him, but a lot of people think that that was another one of those shadow clones that they've maybe been on the Severance floor this entire time. And if that is the case, if they are coming right from the Severance floor, then I get the feeling they're probably coming right from optics and design, and maybe they are 3D printed copy models just built to serve a very simple function.
Okay. I certainly don't think that. They didn't seem like they, for some reason, and they didn't say anything or really do anything to indicate it. But I think you're right. I think they were very. It seemed like they were very simplistic and single purpose, single use things. I wouldn't see them like show it, like, for example, like Irving's duplicate. I wouldn't see them putting him in MDR.
Could you imagine going to MDR one day and seeing this version of Dylan? This version of Dylan? It doesn't even look like him. Like, it doesn't even look like him. It looks, again, they're weird, like, shadow representations of them where they don't look exactly alike. They look similar, but when you get up close, you can tell this is a completely, totally different person from Dylan. It just looks similar to him.
And it's funny, like how you almost never there's a word that you almost never hear, and then suddenly you hear it once, and then you hear it like 2 more times. I've heard the word mountebank like 3 times in this week, and not even in like the Severance circles or anything. It's like, man, does everybody just? I didn't realize this. Maybe mountebank is a word that people use.
Maybe it is. Maybe
he's a mountebank.
Susie says the last one was my least favorite, but still good, and that's totally fine. And it definitely wasn't my favorite episode of the season. Episode 5. Again, anytime you have an episode like episode 4, where you have some big stuff happening, and it's this big kind of climactic event at the end of the episode. Anytime you have a big event like that, usually the following episode is going to be a little bit slower. It is going to be a little bit more of what we got, kind of the aftermath episode. Let's show the aftermath of the Orpo. We got the big Orpo. We got the big event. We got to see our innies outside. All this crazy stuff happened. We lost Irving. Helena got exposed. We got all the big stuff. And anytime you get an episode like that, yes, usually the following one is one of those episodes where you kind of stop, take a breather, survey the land, see how these things are going to affect the story going forward, see how our characters are dealing with some of the big events going forward. And I think that was a big part of episode 5 in and of itself. Seeing Mark and Helly in particular deal with everything that happened on the Orpo and how they choose to confront it, how they choose to kind of go through it. And it was interesting. It was very interesting to see how different Mark was in this episode. And again, I mean, I know we got a lot of comments of Mark, of people thinking that Mark was a little bit cold in this episode. And I do agree. I agree. I feel like he could have been a little bit better with Helly. I feel like he could have been at the very least, a little more open and honest with her. I feel, Mark also has his right to grieve. He has his right to feel any way he wants to feel. He did get violated too, in a sense, but he's got to be honest with her. I feel like not telling Helly what Helena did in the tent, that's going to fester. That is going to turn into something that is going to continue to fester to the point where she's going to end up finding out from somebody else, because we already know everybody else knows. Dylan knows. Milchick knows. Milchick calls him out right in the episode in the elevator at the end of the episode. So I think that is going to continue to fester unless Mark comes forward and just tells Helly himself. It needs to come from him. If she finds out from somebody else, it's going to make it even worse.
Right. And if it comes from Dylan, if it comes from anybody else that tells her, it's not going to be helpful to Mark. They're going to be doing it to fuck Mark over. So, and I kind of understood his position too, because like the discussion that he had with Helly in the hallway, when she was kind of following him around or whatever, and he just said, look, they're smarter than us. They know everything because you told them. So he just watched all of his plans, all of his little schemes and stuff, all the stuff he thought he was getting over on the system. He just watched that all just get washed away, and so he's back down to 0. So that I think that's why he was almost like just seeing even how he shortened his stay at the funeral meeting or whatever. He's just like, I may as well just get back to work, or as long as and he even said as long as it doesn't take too long. He just wanted to get back to it. But you're right. I mean, it has to come from him, and it has to come from him soon. That's one thing that I liked. Probably one of the things I liked the most in this episode. And I do agree with Susie that this one for me, I liked everything. Normally, I like everything, and everything has a purpose. But then there's a huge cliffhanger at the end that kind of makes you. Probably by design, tries to make you forget some of the stuff that went on because you're so laser focused on the cliffhanger, like Mark being reintegrated and all this stuff. What's going to happen? Oh my god! Well, this one, I don't think they stuck the landing at the end, and I think you probably know how I feel about dream sequences. It doesn't matter what show it is. Dream sequences are the stupidest thing. I hate them. They mean nothing to me. They're like everybody. If I were to tell you my dream last night, you can't describe a dream properly. it's like, yeah, I was mowing the lawn in my third grade teacher's yard, and it's like, what the fuck are you talking about? So unless they're gonna define exactly, unless it's an actual premonition, then spare me dream sequences altogether. I don't like hallucinations because ultimately they're meaningless. I don't like dreams because ultimately they're meaningless unless it has a direct whatever. The one thing I did like was this scene that you have right here.
Oh yeah,
because I remember, man, Mark just stepped into he did his work day. He steps into the elevator, and then Milchick, drops a bomb. You fucked your Audi. You fucked her Audi. On the Ortbo, have a restful sleep, and then the door closes, ding. So that's the first thing when he gets out of the elevator tomorrow. That's the first thing on his mind. And here, this is the other thing that it's so realistic to the corporate life is he's going to have that. He's going to have the full weight of that. He doesn't have the whole night to process it and figure out blah blah blah. It's going to be fresh as fresh can be when he steps off that elevator. The minute he clocks in tomorrow morning, the minute the severance chip kicks in, and he walks off the elevator tomorrow. So he's going to have to be processing that in his mind and carrying on his normal day like a normal person. And you're going to have to go on with the normal office banter and the bullshit and pretend like everything's okay. And if you even hint that there's anything wrong, then people are going to be, hey, what's wrong? What's up? And then you're not going to be wanting to talk about that either. So it's very realistic. And even when you have, like say you have a death in the family overnight, and then, or but not enough that you can get to call in to work, but it's still on your mind. You just want to, stay to yourself, do your work, and be left alone. And you still have to worry about people, bitching. Oh, somebody put the coffee pot back on the coffee machine and it was empty. That's how you break the carafe. I'm like, motherfucker, I don't care about the carafe. That's so. But so he's gonna have the full brunt of the information hit him the minute he clocks in, the minute he steps off that elevator tomorrow morning. Now the question is, are they going to start episode 6 where episode 5 left off? And we've seen many a time in this show and others that they don't necessarily do so.
No, sometimes they'll skip a little bit. It'll be a little bit, not like a crazy time jump, but it doesn't always pick up directly where it leaves off. Sometimes we pick up and it's already into the new chapter. You know what I mean? Like it does skip a little bit sometimes. Yeah. It does. Yeah, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see where episode 6 starts off. I imagine it'll probably be similar to that. Yeah, where there'll be a little bit of a skip. Like I imagine it's not going to be episode 6 starting with Mark kind of coming right back off the elevator floor and just after having experienced this. For him, it's going to feel like that for sure. Because like you said, he can't go home and process it for a night and think about what to do. It's kind of just now. This is our only present kind of thing.
Yeah. And he is going to have to tell Helly. He's going to have to tell Helly, and then he's going to be, I don't know if necessarily on the defensive, but he's going to be the one that has to, because it was him and her Audi, he's going to have to be the one to at least, I don't know what you call it, the emotional support or the shoulder to cry on or the focus of her anger even. And I don't know that he's really willing to do that or to be that. He was kind of in the same boat. He was deceived as well. So, and I believed him when he said, when she was asking him, what was she like? She's like, she was like you, what, how could, she's like, how could you not know it wasn't me? It's like, she was you. Yeah. Interesting.
It's a very sticky situation. It's a very sticky situation, what's going on there. And I do agree with Ty. I feel Mark needs to tell Helly before anybody else. I don't know. I feel like there's no excuse for him not telling her. I don't know. Maybe that's just how I see it. I know Mark was victimized too, but Helly was victimized in a way where she had complete and total consent just completely ripped away from her, where someone who was pretending to be her while using her body at the same time. So I think Mark has a right to kind of grieve and also be a victim as well in any way he wants. But him not telling her what Helena did with her body while pretending to be her, I'm sorry. I just feel there's no excuse for that. He's got to come clean because eventually she will find out from somebody else.
Right.
And that is going to make it 10 times worse. If it doesn't come from Mark, it's going to be 10 times worse when she does find out. So Mark needs to just kind of man up and say it.
Yeah.
That's just my opinion.
Because any other situation where she does find out, or she's told by there's no other person, either management or coworker, that is in a better position to tell her than Mark, or should be the one telling her, and it's only going to be hurtful. It's only going to be hurtful to her, and just the very fact that anybody else other than Mark tells her is going to be hurtful, because it's 100% between her and Mark. I'm actually surprised that about a third of the people are saying that he should not have told her. I think I could see him keeping it to himself for a minute while he processes it, but he's got to be the one. He absolutely has to be the one, and the sooner the better.
Absolutely.
There's no two ways about it. Otherwise it's just going to be more havoc, more emotional havoc. And I mean, how would she respond? I mean, how will Helly react to it? No way to tell. I mean, tears, rage.
Yeah, how do you react to something like that? Exactly. Well, and that's the thing. I think Helly's reaction to it is her, but she has the right to know. I think. I think. I don't know. I don't envision how him keeping it from her could ever be the right choice here, especially when other people know. It's not like this is just a secret between them two. That I could maybe understand a little bit more. If it was just between them two, nobody else knew, they could deal with it on their own time after Mark has had some time to process it. Maybe I could understand that, but this isn't some secret. This is something the entire office knows about. If he doesn't come clean, she will find out from Dylan, or she will find out from Milchick. And I think that's just going to make matters 10 times worse. At least if it comes from Mark is giving her what she wanted. She wants honesty. She wants to know what happened up there.
Right. And the fact that, and it's not just that a few people, you made a good point. Every single other person knows that. So the longer he doesn't tell her, it's going to be like, so everybody knows this secret and I don't know it. So everybody's just, so I'm the dumbass, and I think we talked about it on the previous show too. The betrayal is always the worst, because you have you look inward at yourself about, how could I be so stupid? Why didn't I see the signs? How could I not have known? And this is a perfect example of that, when everybody in the office knows that something happened and you're the only one who doesn't know, and you're just, blithely going along thinking everything, even if you got a sense that something's wrong, you have no idea that's the thing that went wrong. And it's like, wow. Yeah. So it'll hurt her more for him not to tell her, for her to be the only one not in the know.
To not know. Yeah, I do think that'll hurt her more in the long run if she does find out from somebody else and not Mark, especially if she finds out that she was literally the last person to find out about it. That's going to hurt her, I think. And Ty hits the nail on the head right here, like you usually do, Ty. I always like Ty's takes. But yes, this show just has such a good job. It does this so well, where it takes just awkward office drama and magnifies it because of the circumstances of being severed. And it does make everything 10 times more complicated. I mean, this weird, awkward office style drama stuff can be weird in and of itself. But then when you add the fact that there are severed individuals in it, the fact that there are essentially two people sharing a body, it just makes everything 10 times more complicated. And the show really knows how to kind of turn that dial up to 11 and really show us that process and show us what being severed would be like, what some of the kind of after effects, some of the consequences of being severed and going through something like this would actually look like. So I completely agree that is one of the great parts of the show, Ty, that they can kind of just take these weird, awkward moments and just turn them up to 11 because the severed factor is there for sure. Love that. sticky episode. And again, I mean, hasn't season 2 just gotten completely different from season 1 in a sense, where season 1 was kind of, it was way more, not more surface level, but it was a little more innocent. They didn't really kind of dive into some of this deeper, crazier stuff. And when you hear the creator talk about it, you can totally understand why the show is going in this direction now. He wanted season 1 to feel like the innies' childhood, like their childhood stage. And he wants season 2 to feel a little bit more like they are growing into adolescence. And growing into adolescence, that's when you start experiencing these things for the first time. You start experiencing new emotions for the first time. You start having your first relationships for the first time, first serious ones anyway. So I see where the creators are going. They want the show to kind of be portrayed in a manner where this is a journey of self-discovery. This is a journey of growth of these innies going from children to adulthood ultimately.
Yeah. And the scene when Mark was sitting back in his computer and he saw, we got that real quick flip through. It was kind of interesting because they get your focus in one direction and you tend to look past the other things that they're showing you. And that was a very interesting when he was flipping through the one that said like Bellingham, and I'm not even going to try to pronounce where the meteor Schlub or whatever that fell, that the meteor crater in the Gulf, all those different names. That was cool and neat, and it showed Mark, focusing back on refinement. But the frames that were in between that was Milchick going through the printout of his review. And it, it's like, what's next for Seth Milchick or something, whatever. But some of the stuff that they had put in there, I had to freeze frame it after his atonements and approbations. Well, we didn't really get too many approbations, but one of them, when I freeze framed it, it said something like, during the review, it said he was praised for his energy and vigor, and that is encouraged as a ballast that the severed workers can use to anchor their work experience. That was, they didn't say that out loud, but it was printed out on his little thing as he was flipping through. So that was like, I was like, oh, okay. But they also interspersed that we were like laser focused on what Mark was seeing with, and trying to make hay out of what those additional programs, the program
what
names.
are the code names other mean?
Yeah.
What are the codes for? Yeah, you got the classical block, we got the OTC, those two we've experienced up until this point. We know what those ones stand for, but yeah, we had tons of other commands on there: branch transfer, freeze frame, all this kind of stuff that I imagine will probably come up at some point in the series. I imagine those were Easter eggs for future protocols that maybe we will see in episodes. Maybe not all of them, but maybe we'll see a few more of them. But the show does a good job of foreshadowing things, but it's one of those things where it foreshadows things, but you can't see the foreshadowing until you're in hindsight. Like with Irving and Helena in episode 4, and him kind of essentially waterboarding her. We see, when you look back in hindsight, you see that there's a clear, very clear foreshadowing for that scene happening in the orientation video that Keanu Reeves narrates in the beginning of the season, where you literally see Helly bobbing for apples with Irving standing right above her. It's literally the exact same camera angle and everything. It looks exactly the same. So they do throw these little foreshadowy moments in there, but sometimes you don't see them until after the fact.
Absolutely. And again, man, because after it was funny how they said it could take from 2 to the atonements and approbations could take 2 to 6 hours, depending, and lunch may be served if it goes beyond 4. And then they gave him the lunch menu, so presumably it went extra long. But when he was going through that printout, like the actual things that what was the guy's name again? I just lost it. The guy giving the review.
Drummond, Mr. Drummond.
Okay, I keep forgetting Mr. Drummond. I'm gonna have to write that. All the things that Drummond had mentioned, like the minor infractions and stuff. Those were all printed out on that thing as Seth was flipping through the pages. And I think he had that scene with Natalie where he brought up the paintings again. And I was thinking, okay, man, don't go that direction. I was really kind of like cringing, thinking that they were going to use like the insult of the paintings as the full impetus for Milchick to break away, his loyalty from Lumen. But following it up, and Natalie didn't give him anything in this episode as
No.
far as
He's
when he
not
tried to
giving her
pursue
what
that.
she's not giving him what she knows what he's looking for, but she's
Mhm.
not giving it to him. Yeah.
But then with the with the negative review, mostly negative review, or seemingly mostly negative review, because all we saw, I mean, I was pretty fortunate to be able to freeze frame it, but I think they did it clear enough that it was readable, because normally they'll blur it, or when something's printed, they can make it so that you can't freeze frame it and get a good. So the one positive approbation, the one positive thing that was on his list of on his printed performance review, we didn't actually hear that. So I think there's going to be but so we're left with the idea that it was mostly negative, and it seems like it was mostly negative, or pretty much everything that Milchick, even the way they described it, like the catastrophic Ordbow and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's
Milchick's many
really,
mistakes on the Orpo. Yeah. They're
yeah,
putting it all on him.
yeah. I don't know, man. I think that is in place for him, and I don't think they're even close to there yet. But I think that he's got a few more key moments where he feels like he's being let down by the company, and no matter what he does, everything that he tries, it and sometimes, I mean, it kind of is his fault, but I mean, maybe he shouldn't have planned an Ortbow. I think he thought it was going to work out perfectly, and maybe if it had worked out perfectly, they would have gotten the end result of a closer team. And it talked about Ortbows being to reduce their fear of the outside and whatnot, of the Yennies' fear of the outside. But I don't know how many more negative feedbacks he's going to be able to
take.
To swallow down and just grin and bear it. And for somebody who doesn't watch cast interviews, I also saw one with Tremel Tillman, and he said the same thing. He's like, and he was very, because when you introduce race into anything, it automatically carries its own weight, and that's kind of how I felt about it. I was like, man, why are they going to go in this direction? I thought it was going to be some basic like grievance about the paintings that's going to cause him to completely abandon his entire career. And I thought, well, that's not exactly the Milchick we know. But Tremel Tillman, yeah, he mentioned it though.
Planted.
Yeah. And he mentioned that he wanted to really go into that with that seed fully fleshed out, before they go down that road, just because of how loaded, introducing that to the story would be.
Yeah.
But I think he's got a few more instances before he flips. I'm thinking it's getting more and more likely the over under on him flipping at some point, or being one of the characters to do so. And I don't know if he's going to, I mean, do you see him working with the Innies, or do you just see him doing something? Because we've already had the whistleblower thing. I mean, last season, the the Innies, the OTC thing was the whistleblower thing, trying to take down a big corporation. So I don't think they can go to that well again.
I don't know. I mean, unless that was foreshadowing for somebody going to that well again, even I'm not sure. If Milchick ever does turn on the company, what does that look like exactly? And is that him working with the Innies to take Lumen down, or is that kind of going rogue on his own to try and sabotage the company by himself? That, I guess, is the interesting question, because I feel like we are going to get to a point where Milchick will eventually realize that he's not playing for the winning team. I do think that seed of doubt was planted with that gift that he received, and I think the way he kind of is trying to reach out to Natalie ever so often, is a clear sign that he was very uncomfortable with it, as he should have been. It was such a fucked up weird gift.
Right.
So I think it was the seed. I think that's the seed that was planted. The seed of doubt has been planted in Milchick's head. Now it needs to sprout. And I do think there's going to have to be a few more infractions. He's going to have to see Lumen in a little bit more of a different and dirtier light. He's going to have to maybe learn some other stuff, some of the other darker stuff that they're doing maybe. I do think he will eventually get there. Probably not this season. I'm not really expecting Milchick to kind of turn this season, but I'm hoping maybe by season 3, maybe then we will see a little bit of a redemption arc for Milchick, where season 3 comes around. He's got all this stuff in his head where he's finally starting to see Lumen for who they really are. And he's realizing, I've been loyal to the wrong company for too long. Enough is enough. I need to do something about this. Because I think ultimately he does have morals.
Yeah, and I'm loving this. I mean, Xavier has the opinion that that she's like, shut the hell up, Seth. They're watching.
Exactly.
I think so, true. And then Matt Gilbert says that Milchick won't turn. He's going to double down being a company man. Because he is a company man through and through.
Yeah, I think he will the rest of this season. I think this meeting right here, this performance review. Yes, and I even mentioned this in my episode review. I think this performance review that Milchick got is going to make him double down. It's going to make him, because he even says, I'm tightening the leash. So I do think we are going to see a Milchick that is a little more dedicated to the company, a little bit more keeping the innies on lock, not giving them as much freedom as he once did. I do think that is the Milchick we're going to see for the rest of this season. But eventually Milchick will turn. Like I'm if I could bet on anything on this show, Milchick will have that redemption arc. I don't think it's going to be in season 2. I do think he's going to double down after this meeting. I think Drummond put the fear of God into him. He put that fear into him to kind of let him know that they were disappointed in his performance. They're not happy with his performance up until this point. So I think this performance review had the desired effect. So I am expecting Milchick to kind of double down and be that company man for the rest of this season. But I think eventually Milchick will get there where he does realize that Lumen is not his team.
And I want to bring up Ty Briggs here because he put his finger right on my next point. And when he was talking to Natalie, I think after the second interaction, he kind of got the idea that she's not going to be the port for him to pull into. She's not going to be a co-conspirator with him. And I think that's going to be one of the keys to making him go back to being the company man, because even if there was a seed of doubt, it isn't getting nurtured. Not at Natalie's expense. And I think, Natalie might be in that position too. She's like, look, I've gotten this far. I'm not going to throw it all away. I felt the same way about the paintings, but guess what? I ain't giving up what I got. I got the board in my ear in my little headset. So that's a level of power. I mean, she could tell Harmony Cobell what's what. I mean, that's a level where Natalie is. So you're not gonna.
Don't we need a villain though? Everyone can't be good. And that's the thing. Everyone can't be a good guy. But Milchick is not the ultimate villain of this show. Lumen is the ultimate villain of the show. Milchick is definitely not the main villain. Like every show needs that main villain. Every show needs that big bad. You need that you need that adversary to overcome. But Milchick's not that. Milchick is not the main villain of the show. Lumen is definitely the main villain. And I do think he will ultimately turn.
And we just talking about turning, freaking Ricken. That was a major, because look, I think he was. I mean, I think you could probably clip me 2 or 3 episodes back saying, he's my favorite character. He's not a bad guy. He's well-meaning, but he isn't just that benign doofus now. He's now a sellout, a full-on sellout.
Yeah, and he's willing to compromise his view for money at the end of the day. And I think that's something even his wife was a little surprised of. She straight up says, like, this is literally the exact opposite of everything you believe.
Yeah. And that's it. I mean, there's the 2 things, money and fame. And if the money doesn't get you, that maybe the fame, and we already know that he's seeking approval from Mark. He's seeking approval from everybody. If he can get approval on a global scale, talking about selling millions of copies of his book, and then and he'll try to soften it, and he even said in the episode that what if I it might spark a revolution if I can surreptitiously get my ideas into the into Lumen or whatever. That's probably a very rosy anticipation of what his book might do, but it's still not it still doesn't justify him rewriting his book into Lumen speak, essentially.
Yes. I mean, it's one thing to alter your book to make it a little more accessible and a little bit more consumable to innies that, so they maybe can understand it better. But if you're changing your core principles and you're changing your core beliefs just to suit Lumen's needs, then you're selling out. You are ultimately selling out in this moment. And I know that has completely disappointed the cult of Ricken that we have been establishing here on this channel and in this fandom. The cult of Ricken was so strong up until this episode. Now we're even losing faith in Ricken of all people. It's like, come on, Severance. Severance is taking everything from us. Fuck me.
And I loved how his wife, I mean, she said all she needed to say without overdoing it, without harping on it. I loved how that whole sequence was executed in the script, in the story, and everything. And she did. I mean, she basically called him out on his bullshit in such a realistic way, not in a cruel way, not in a. I mean, because one of my criticisms with her was her and Mark seemed to be a little smarmy almost, and she almost had like a baseline disrespect. Like she knew that he was a kind of a dipshit too, and I didn't like that aspect of it. But she seemed like somebody who was trying to course correct him in the gentlest possible way, somebody she cared about. And she stood to benefit too. I mean, if he rises, she rises. So it took some brass for her to say, look, this is absolutely the opposite. So I like that. But you know what? This echoes reality again. Remember, it wasn't all that long ago. People were when I don't even want to say every dipshit middle manager was buying The Art of War for middle management or whatever. Remember when they rewrote The Art of War for corporate dipshits?
Make it more consumable for corporate people to read because they can't read like authentic Sun Tzu.
Right. Or they couldn't get a war analogy; they had to have it spoon fed to them. So.
Yeah, exactly. I have heard a lot of people pointing this out though, and I guess it wasn't something I noticed myself at first until I saw a lot of people starting to point it out, and then I looked a little bit closer, and I can kind of see where people are coming from now. Yeah, it does. The actor playing Ricken and the actor playing Mr. Drummond, they do look a little bit alike. Like if you were to tell me they were brothers or cousins, I probably wouldn't bat an eye. Like after hearing that from so many fans and so many people pointing that out, I went back into the look. I'm like, wait a minute, do they look alike? And they do. They do kind of have a kind of weird resemblance, and that has put forth some interesting fan theories that. Who is Ricken really? Is Ricken really an Eagan? Is Ricken really connected to Lumen in a deeper way than we know? Will Ricken ultimately end up becoming a villain? There's a lot of really crazy and fun Ricken theories out there that I love. Of Ricken secretly being Kier and like all this crazy stuff is out there because he's such like a mythical figure among the community now. Like just how he is, his kind of his new age way, his book, the way his book has been revered, and how he's kind of been turned into this kind of messiah like figure by the innies. There's this aura around Ricken. I mean, hell, that's why the Ricken cult was established. I mean, he's a cult leader. But yeah, and after seeing a lot of people mention this, and I did go back and look, and I can see where people are coming from. Again, they do kind of look similar. The actors look very similar, like they could be related. Is that coincidence, or is that a hint for something more? I don't know. I'm not sure, but I know a lot of people are noticing it.
Yeah, what was that show on Netflix that was set in the the Mormon Wars in the Old West? We just talked about it not too long. I can't remember the name of it.
American Primeval.
American Primeval. Okay. That Drummond's haircut reminds me of that. I don't know if it's like the severe part and then the little kind, not quite page boy, but it goes over the ears just a little bit. And it reminds me of like an 1890s, 1870s kind of haircut style. And I wondered though, I was focused on. It was so weird that we even mentioned that we're talking about the looks of Ricken and stuff.
Of Ricken,
But
yeah.
yeah, but and I have a beard, so I was looking at his beard and how it's kind of like it's trimmed, but it's not. It's still a little bit loose, a little wild, and so it's not like tightly trimmed. I'm like, that is a strange dude, and he's got that. Yeah, he's got that weird part. Anything over the ears, any long hair over the ears looks a little, it's its own look too. So I was like, but yeah, I'm not sure if I would say that he's similar to Drummond. But it has that weird. I mean, that does kind of look that I see so many parallel between the cultish aspect of like Scientology and then a little bit of Mormonism, a little bit of like hierarchy that Mormonism had, and like the heir apparent, directly below and whatnot. Although this is pretty strange too, because it's all in the it's all within one family, and it calls back to like the robber barons, where that era of time where somebody you would pass it along to your your next of kin, or like a Vanderbilt type thing. So there's a whole lot of Xavier Anderson says the word you're looking for is assholey. Yeah, it very well could be. But there's a lot of weird aspects to it. I mean, and a lot of parallels that hint at, and we see it a lot, and they're doing it very craftily in this show, and I would say even masterfully. It's like they're giving you the taste of something. I mean, I got the taste of Scientology, the taste of Mormonism, the taste of these different kind of like structures, and then of course the standard corporate a lot of the corporate jargon and the structures and all this team building, the fakeness of it. All of it is kind of like pretty skillfully woven together without any of it being where you can't really exactly put your finger on it and say, aha, they're telling the story of Scientology, or they're telling the story of this or the story of that. They're just giving you the hint of that. And I kind of dig how they're doing that. And because anything more would have, if they try to shoehorn anything more in, it would look ham-fisted, it would look clumsy, but they're really subtle with it, and I super dig that in the writing of this.
Okay, interesting. They don't hit you over the head with too many stuff. Like they definitely weave in these themes and these plots, and they ask these questions of the audience. And I do like shows like that. I do like shows that ultimately asks questions of their audience, that challenges the audience to actually really think about things sometimes. So I do appreciate Severance in that manner. It is a very cerebral show. It definitely makes you think, and I like that. I really do like that. And I like this as well. I must say, Devon is the only sane person on this show. Like, honestly, at times it does feel that way, doesn't it? And yeah, I mean, hail to Devon. Love her so much. She really is great. Yes, like I do agree with you. I do agree with you, Quan. I feel like at times Devon is the only fucking sane person on this entire show. And her honesty is always very refreshing. And I like how she handles Ricken here in this moment, how she doesn't coddle him. She's not coddling his ego. She's straight up telling him, no, like this goes against everything you stand for, everything you believe in. And she's not the type to be swayed by some big paycheck. So I really do love Devon's authenticity. And yes, I agree. At times it does seem like she's the only fucking sane one in a crazy fucking world that this show is, for sure.
Right. And when we were talking about her and Mark, when Devon and Mark's relationship, and how it was a little snarky towards Ricken. And that's what I liked the least, or where I found the least believable, because it was questionable. Why is she married to this guy? Why does she, if she's so snark? But this is somebody who cares about him, who cares. I mean, she wouldn't be course correcting him. She wouldn't be, and she didn't do it in a snarky, condescending way. And I think that might just be the Mark and Devon dynamic. And I think, my brother and I could probably do the same thing. We sit there, we might be a little snarkier towards outsiders or whatever, because they don't have, but ultimately, yeah, she has his best, his best interest at heart. And
Yeah,
again, she could take the money and run too. She could just say, look,
easily. Yeah,
you do what you need to do and sell those 1,000,000 copies, and we'll move into a bigger house in Kier or whatever. We'll have the biggest house in all of Kier, PE, wherever
yeah,
PE is,
yeah, yeah.
province of Egan.
Yeah, it's a very interesting dynamic, and one thing we've seen so many comments on, like so many freaking comments ever since Severance started. We see a lot of people asking, how did these two fall for each other? How are Devon and Ricken even a couple? Like they seem so uncompatible with each other. And maybe that's it. Maybe that is ultimately it. Maybe Devon is that blunt, honest kind of figure that Ricken needs, because Ricken does have these kind of, I wouldn't say delusions of grandeur, but he does have these very lofty ideas. He does want his ideas to be accepted. He does want adoration for his work. Like he does want to be liked. Ricken does want to be loved. And I think Devon is just that refreshing voice that keeps him, hopefully is going to keep him grounded. That way, whenever stuff like this does come around and he does think about kind of compromising his beliefs for a paycheck, she's there to tell him, like, hey, no, this isn't you. This is not who you are. This is not the man I fell in love with. These are not your beliefs. So I think
Right.
maybe that's a big dynamic of their relationship, where Devon can just be that blunt, honest figure in his life, where everybody else around him is always giving him platitudes. I would imagine we see how his friends act around him. They
Right.
love his book, they love this, they love that. It's everything for Ricken. He's a cult leader, and I think
Mhm.
she's that one honest, grounding voice in his life.
Yeah, and talking about anachronistic things, look at that typewriter, man. That thing is a
Oh my
monstrosity.
God. That is a George R.R. Martin typewriter right there, if I have ever seen one. He still writes on these things, the old Go. Um, yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, it is crazy. And Lumen, it does have a little bit of that kind of Mormonism, maybe Scientology kind of cross, but kind of vibe woven into it, in a sense, where Lumen doesn't feel like a company. It does kind of almost feel like a religion. At the very least, you can tell Lumen wants its employees to worship
Mhm.
it. Like, you look at the
Yeah,
Kier
yeah,
handbook and you
yeah.
listen to all of the passages in the Kier handbook, it does read a little bit more like a religious organization than a company, for sure. There
Right.
is
And
that
I
aspect.
and I pick up, I pick up like Pfizer or like Bayer AG or like some of these, multinationals that were founded in the 1800s based on one thing. Like, like with Bayer, it was a synthetic aspirin. With,
Yeah,
with Pfizer, who knows where they, I don't know what their origin was, but I mean, we see it again and again, how companies founded back then, and then they become this whole other thing. So you're mixing in like almost a cult like a quasi religious, quasi cult like structure on top of the corporate stuff as well. And I find I find it very satisfying. I think it's so neat that they were able to uh, mash all these things together, and it doesn't look, it doesn't break my ability to have, everything takes suspension of disbelief. Anything does, but this one doesn't really stress you out as far as like, oh well, I got to draw the line here because this is just completely not believable. This is, pretty much all plausible. And I can't remember the chat that said it, but when they're talking about robber barons and company towns, same thing, company towns, where the company literally built the town and put the workers in it. They own
yeah,
everything. They have everything. Yeah, absolutely,
yeah.
absolutely.
Mhm. Yeah,
We got
everything's
these guys in the chat are pretty perceptive. I appreciate it. And even when I
absolutely.
am I try to be eloquent, but I'm not always on point. They can always rephrase it and put their finger right on it. So I definitely
Yeah.
appreciate that.
Yeah, yeah, and that's why we love hearing from the chat, because I do genuinely want to hear what everybody thinks. What did you guys think of this episode or that topic, yada yada. And yeah, the chat always fucking kills it with the feedback. I love the feedback we get from everybody, and the discussions we have here. It's fun. It dives a little bit deeper into things. It's okay to look at the surface level, but I like looking a little bit deeper at some of the deeper meanings behind some of these plots and themes and the show in general. And I know the chat does too, and it's always good to see what the chat finds and how they perceive these things for sure. But yeah, what is Cold Harbor? Ultimately, what is Cold Harbor? The big mystery of the season. What is Mark working on? Why is it so important that Lumen makes sure he finishes this Cold Harbor file? We know that he was 86% complete upon the last episode, so he's getting closer and closer to finally getting that Cold Harbor file done. But what is it ultimately? I mean, they've given us really no hint, no indication at all as to what it could be. All we get is that quick little glimpse, that quick little flash at the beginning of episode 1 this season, where we see just a glimpse of a computer screen that says Cold Harbor on it, and we see Mark's wife's face. So whatever Cold Harbor is, it has to do with Mark, it has to do with Miss Casey, it has to do with Gemma, but beyond that, we don't really know much else. We have no idea why they're involved, what capacity are they involved in this Cold Harbor. But I imagine we're going to find out. I mean, again, the last episode in season 2 is titled Cold Harbor. So I imagine this isn't going to be one of those kind of cliffhangers where they don't reveal it this season and they carry it over to season 3. Maybe part of the storyline will carry over to season 3. But I
not
think
a throwaway, not a meme title or anything like that, which leads us to
we'll get the reveal.
Episode 6 title. You had some ideas on that one.
Attilla, yes. Episode 6 is titled Attilla, and there isn't a whole lot to go on as far as the episode 6 preview goes. But of course, I'm sure many people have heard of Attilla the Hun, and his famous military conquests, and even some of the deeper, story that when you think about some of the stuff that he went through with his own brother, Attila's story with his own brother is definitely shares some similarities to the story we heard of Kier and Dieter in episode 4. So yeah, I'm very much looking forward to seeing why is episode 6 titled Attilla, and how is that going to be woven into the fabric of the episode? Is it going to be a deeper meaning within the episode? I imagine they chose that title Attilla for a reason. I imagine it's not just a random title they just picked out of a hat. So yeah, what exactly is episode 6 going to be like? What does Attila's military conquest have to do with Severance, and how is it going to overlap? Similar how Helena of Troy did in the previous one.
True. Yeah, and I mean, like his conquests are legendary, but then there's even that strange one in 452 when he got to Italy and met with the Pope, and whatever happened to that meeting, the Pope convinced him just to stop, turn around and go away. And that was a strange one too. Strange occurrences. And then another part of me says that, what if Attila is, what if it's been like not an anagram. I've lost the word for it. When the letters represent, I should know this.
An anagram, an anagram for something. Maybe.
Like advanced temporary intellect, low level adjustment. Yeah, or something.
Yeah, like ORPO, like the ORPO.
Yeah, ORPO. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, maybe, yeah.
Or an acronym. Maybe. That's the word I was looking for.
Yeah, acronym. That's it. See, the chat always has our back. There we go.
Yeah, ORPO would be like a anagram for robot or something.
Yes.
Where you can switch the words around. But yeah, acronym.
Could it be code for something else? Could it be, we know the show likes to do those kinds of things every once in a while, whether it's the ORPO, we see they actually did a specific little promo video, even season 2, when they were doing season 2, they put out a little promo video called LUME, and it's very similar in that it's an acronym for this management program between Milchick and Mini Milchick. So the show does like to do that. We know they do like to play in that arena every once in a while. So is Attila referring to Attila the Hun, or is it a little bit more along those lines? Maybe. I suppose that's a good question.
Yeah, strange one. Oh, and one other thing that the girl that plays Miss Wong said is there's even reports, like when you open the drawers, even though you'll never see them in the episode or anything, the drawers have like reports and stuff printed out that the set designers have put
the pre-printed out rewards and stuff, the pre-printed out mugs and everything like that. It seems like they got everything. Like any occasion, anything that pops up, Lumen has something with the Lumen logo on it ready to go, like ready to fucking go.
And she said, she
Um,
says even if it never makes it into the episode, there's still like, if you open a
yeah,
cabinet or a drawer, there's the Lumen stuff in there already. It's like, wow,
exactly.
that's so weird and cool though.
Exactly. Yeah, they're prepared. They got they got all their bases covered, and I do appreciate that. I do appreciate a good planner. Pre warned is pre armed. Better to have it and not need it than need it and not have it is my motto. Um, but yeah, Xavier Anderson points out Mark is a history teacher, wasn't he? Maybe that's why he was chosen to rewrite history. Interesting, Xavier.
Okay.
Very interesting indeed.
Okay.
And yes, he was. I mean, I imagine them giving us that detail wasn't just a random throwaway detail. I mean, yes, it gives us a little bit of character development and character background on who Mark was before he was severed, but the fact that they made him a history teacher specifically, yes, you do get the sense that maybe that is going to come into play in some kind of manner. So yeah, that's a very interesting idea, Xavier. That maybe his history background will play a part at some point. Maybe I could see that
Oh,
happening.
okay. And that might actually underscore why he's so important to that process too, why it has
Yeah,
to be
maybe.
Mark. Because that was a big question for me is, they said it, he's important to this thing, and he's like the only one that can do it kind of thing.
Yeah,
To the point where they would they would fire his team and then reconstruct his team pretty much on his request / demand.
yeah, yeah.
But yeah, why him? Why Mark of all people? That's a
Why
good.
not?
That's a good.
Yeah.
Very perceptive, and there may be some meat on that bone. I'd be interested to
It
see.
could be. There very well could be. Yeah, maybe his history background will come into play. Maybe that will enter the main plot at some point and be a factor. And like you said, maybe that is ultimately one of the reasons why it has to be Mark, why it has to be Mark's mind, someone who has that historic mind, someone who has that knowledge innate within them. Even if any Mark doesn't have it, Audi Mark does, and it is innate in him, even if it's just subconsciously. So no, I mean that's always been a huge question. Why Mark? Why is he so important? It seems like they have 4 MDR employees that are always working on multiple files. How come Mark specifically has to be the one to complete Cold Harbor? And again, maybe it is because his wife is involved as well. All we get is that one little flash of the testing room floor, and we see the screen, Cold Harbor, and we see a picture of his wife's face on a screen. So whatever Cold Harbor is, maybe it is deeply tied to Gemma and how she ultimately ended up on the severed floor, because that's another question we still need asked. We know she didn't really die, apparently. She didn't really die in that car crash, and we even get a little more hint towards that in this episode as well, when Mark actually asks Ragabi that and says, how did my wife's body end up at Lumen? And she says, they know a lot of people in the morgue. So clearly, whatever body Mark went to identify wasn't really his wife's body. It was a replica. It was something to pass off to be his wife. So yeah, what exactly is the connection? Why is Cold Harbor connected to Miss Casey? Why is Cold Harbor connected to Gemma? Why does Mark have to specifically be the one to complete the file? What is the deeper meaning there? And I think that's probably what will play out over these next 5 episodes, over this second half of the season. I think it's going to be much more laser focused on finding Miss Casey, on finding the testing room floor, learning a little bit more about this exports wing, where that elevator goes, if it goes to other destinations, which I imagine it does. That is where I see the second half of season 2 going, diving deeper and finally finding out more about Miss Casey and what really happened to Gemma. And if Lumen maybe set this whole thing up at the beginning, maybe Lumen faked her whole death right from the beginning just to get her here. And maybe that's why they need Mark, because he has that close connection to her. But I think we will be exploring that over this next half of the season. I think it's going to be very, very heavy Mark reintegration focused, and I think it's going to be very heavy find Miss Casey focused. Those are probably going to be the 2 big plot points in the rest of the season, I'm thinking. It's going to be good. I think it's going to be good.
Curtissimo put the titles. We've got Attilla, Chikai Bardo, which I didn't look up. Sweet Vitriol, though, is diethyl ether, which we already know that Kier had an ether factory. He made his bones. So, and again, vitriol being something like when you talk about like vitriolic speech, it's something bad and bitter, but then you got the sweet version, which is kind of kind of an oxymoron. So, and I have a 100% certainty that they're not talking about diethyl ether. Maybe it's got to be the speech, and that might be further developed. Yeah.
Well, they could be talking about ether. They actually could be. I mean, we do know that Kier and his brother worked at an ether factory, so that must be that connection, I would imagine.
Yeah, I think there's an echo of that, but I bet it has to do with some like bitter speech that's also sweetened, and I bet that has a lot to do with Mark and Helly. That would be my guess on that one, because it's always going to have two meanings. They're never going to put it right on the
Yeah, I do love how a lot of these episode titles do tend to have dual meanings within the actual episode. It's not ever just one thing that it's referring to. I love the dual and sometimes triple meaning behind some of these titles, indeed. Bardo is the moment of death. There's a lot of different lore on Bardo, whether it's Tibetan Buddhism and stuff like that. So maybe they're going to be diving into that kind of realm, metaphorically speaking, of course. But yeah, I mean, the episode titles are always very intriguing. And then when you actually see the episode and you see how these titles are represented in the episode, it's always kind of pretty fascinating, and sometimes it's unexpected. The Helena of Troy one, Trojan's Horse one, that one was a little bit kind of more on the surface, but that of course was Helena of Troy. But then we also have the dual meaning of Ricken riding the Trojan horse in his book. So it does always have that dual meaning. It never just means one thing. I do really enjoy that. So yeah, Attila the Hun, guys. Attila the Hun, episode 6, coming this Thursday. Just a few days away now, guys. We are just 2 days away from episode 6. And of course, in episode 6, we are also going to get this, what I'm sure is not going to be awkward at all, the ham dinner between Irving and Bert's Audis, and of course, Fields as well, which of course is Bert's husband. So this is going to be interesting to see how this plays out. I want to learn a little bit more about Audi Irving. I want to see who is he really, communicating with. We see him having all of these mysterious phone calls in this phone booth, and every time he's always talking about Lumon. He's always talking about his innie. My innie got discovered. They fired me. My innie got the message. It's always Lumon centered, Lumon focused. And then when we see all of the other stuff in Irving's Audi's house at the end of season 1, that apparently his Audi has been researching Lumon for probably a good duration, even researching severed employees and where they live. This is where I want to see. I cannot wait to see what is going on with Audi Irving. Who is he working with? Who is he working for? Is he part of some kind of rebellion that is working against Lumon? How is it going to tie into Christopher Walken's character? A few people were saying in the comment section the other day that they're worried about Irving. They're worried that Irving is working against Lumon, and some people think that maybe Audi Burt is just one big trap, that he's actually working for Lumon and he's setting a trap for Audi Irving. I hope that's not the case, but it's an interesting theory. I thought it was an interesting theory, if nothing else. But I'm looking forward to seeing this. This awkward ham dinner is probably going to be very awkward. But I imagine we're going to get some answers. At the very least, we're probably going to get some answers as to who Burt is and who Irving really is on the outside.
Yeah, I'm wondering, man, are they even going to, I mean, I think when I made the event for Friday's watch party, I said, is there even a ham? Is there really a ham? I mean, are they going to introduce a new character already? Like, I mean, are they going to introduce Fields to the show? Because we kind of, I'm wondering. I mean, I think, as they say, there's many a slip between cup and lip. I don't know that they're ever going to actually get to that. We'll see, though. I mean, maybe they, ideally, yeah, they'll sit across the table and they'll explain everything and yada yada. I don't know that they're going to get to that point.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. I mean, just the whole way that Burt kind of invited him to ham dinner, telling him that they like expensive red wine, like the whole thing. It's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. And I hope Irving isn't walking into a trap. I definitely hope that isn't the case, because that would suck. I mean, all we have left is Audi Irving now. Any Irving's gone. All we have is Audi Irving. I want to learn a little bit more about him. What kind of training does he have? Like, what kind of badass are we dealing with here ultimately? So yeah, episode 6 should be very interesting. It looks like obviously we're going to get whatever this ham dinner ends up being. We're going to get that. It looks like we are also going to get a little bit more of Mark's reintegration in episode 6, which I know is something that a lot of us have probably wanted to dive a little bit more into. We get the reintegration right there at the beginning of the season. The end of episode 3, boom, Mark starts his reintegration. And we haven't dove super deep into the reintegration since then. We've seen it play out a little bit. We see him kind of slowly reintegrating, which we do learn it is more of a gradual process. It's not one of those things where you just flip a button, the brain waves realign, and all of a sudden you're completely synced up. It seems like it's one of those things that's a process. That reintegration takes a few different procedures. So it looks like we're going to see the continue of the reintegration in episode 6. We're going to get the weird, awkward ham dinner in episode 6. And it looks like we are finally going to get our first real appearance of Miss Casey in episode 6 as well. So bring it on. I cannot wait. I cannot wait.
And they didn't even say what time. I watched that scene again. I was like, what time? Was it like an afternoon or is it dinner like 7 p.m.?
Yeah.
For somebody like myself, I like fixate on that kind of stuff. Like, oh my God, I don't know when. And they didn't give a phone number or anything to call. I was like, do I just show up with wine? Like,
do I just show up at some random time with wine? Right. Like, what's going on here?
Yeah. What if they're hungry at 5? What if they didn't eat since lunch and I show up at like 8?
But I think Beezy has the biggest plot twist of all. Helena pregnant with Smiley. There it is. That's the end of the show. Crosses over to From, and that's the end of it. Boom. End scene right there. I like that.
The gelatinous membrane encased Smiley creature, fully grown and butt ass naked, right on the floor.
Oh man. Wouldn't that be something? Wouldn't that be something? Or instead of Smiley, giving birth to a baby Kier. I know a lot of people want a baby Kier to get born based on the little baby Kier that we see in the intro sequence of season 2. And who knows where the show is ultimately going. But yeah, episode 6 looks like it's going to be a very good one. I'm very much looking forward to it. We, of course, will be covering all things episode 6. Thursday, we will be doing our pregame show like we usually do every week while we kill some time and hang out the hour before the episode loads up. So definitely come and hang out with us this Thursday for our episode 6 pregame show, where we will dive a little bit deeper into some episode 6 predictions and see where your guys' head is at heading into this next episode. But I guess before we close out, one thing we always like to do is we always like to ask the chat. And I know we did this in our previous stream, but you never know. Sometimes scores change. Sometimes people watch an episode over again and their score rate, gets lower or higher. And I haven't heard your score yet, Ravener, yet either. But everybody in the chat, and of course, Ravener, you as well, where do you guys rank episode 5 of Severance on a scale from 1 to 10, with 1 being horrible, 10 being perfect? Where do you guys rate episode 5 of Severance? And I do have a trailer, Susie, that will be uploaded on the channel tomorrow. Anybody's looking for the episode 6 little preview, I'm working on my episode 6 preview breakdown right now, and I have the full preview at the beginning of the video. So if anybody wants to see that, I will have that uploaded on the channel tomorrow, definitely. But what about you, Ravener? Where do you rate episode 5 of Severance on 1 to 10?
Ooh, I think on my worst episode, I think the worst I gave it was a 6 out of 10. This one, I think, again, a good episode, like not a blow it out of the park episode. I'll give it a good solid 7.5 though. It did its job. I didn't think it stuck the landing, but that's just because I have a personal animus against dream sequences and hallucinations and stuff.
Yeah.
But other than that, there was a lot of progress in this episode. And that was my major complaint about the Ortbo episode, was that it was just like a holding pattern. Nothing really progressed. I mean, it was a series of great scenes made for a good episode, but it didn't progress the story. This one actually kind of did. I like the developments, and I like the hints of character pivots. So yeah, I'll give this one a good solid 7.5.
Okay, 7.5. Hey, that is not a bad rating. That is awesome. Nothing wrong with 7. Should I say 6 hams? Hey, 6 hams, 6 pineapples, whatever you want to use. That is totally fine. I know people like using the pineapples when it comes to Severance, and that is always fitting. Although you can always go back to the Shōgun avocados, which really kind of started the whole thing, which is true. But yeah. I gave it an 8 during our Saturday review, and I think I'm going to stick with 8. Again, it wasn't my favorite episode of the season, but it did progress the plot forward. We did get some interesting character developments. We got to see the aftermath of the big Ortbo and how some of these things are going to shake out, losing Irving, having Helena get exposed. It was a pretty good aftermath episode, I must say. So I'm probably going to stay at an 8 like I gave it on Saturday.
Okay.
But yeah, great season so far.
Yeah, we're seeing the
Great
chat.
season so far.
Yeah, the chat's digging it.
Yeah.
Didn't scratch the itch for Wild Marjoram, but hey, you know, the 2 episodes ago it didn't, or 1 episode it didn't do it for me either. Most people hitting in the one. Winded Moose at a 5. We got some 10s in there too. So yeah, man, it's good. It's good that it's hitting all along that spectrum for you guys. And I cannot wait to see what happens in this next one. Again, even on the worst episodes, my enthusiasm for how it ends, just because of the way they ended season 1, I probably would have given ratings all over the scale in season 1 right up until the ending. But when I was able to binge it and take it as a whole, I just thought it was great, which is why I'm even doing it in season 2. You know, awesome. I'm not going to be that hater that just watches something to hate it and complain about it. So if I hated the show, I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't.
Yeah, I don't. I feel like I don't have time for that. Like if I hate a show, I'm just not watching it. I hate watching it's not a healthy thing in my opinion.
Yeah. It's funny that Adam Scott was in Parks and Rec, and he looked so young. Yeah. Jen showed me the show called Ghosted. He was in with Craig Robinson. It only had 1 season, and it was he was young in that one too. That was a pretty funny little series. It went, I think, 16 episodes and then got canceled. That was pretty funny. But it reminds me of a Reddit thread where somebody said, like, Adam Scott, from as young as he looked in Parks and Rec, and then even in Ghosted, they said that he looks like somebody's trying to draw Tom Cruise from memory. So I was laughing.
Yeah. He did strangely resemble Tom Cruise in this first episode of season 2 when he's doing his Tom Cruise impression with his Tom Cruise run. There were moments where his face even looked a little bit like Tom Cruise. But yeah, he's a great actor. I mean, he was hilarious in Step Brothers too. Like Step Brothers is probably one of his funniest roles I've ever seen. Like he's super hilarious in that movie. But it's nice to see him get a role like this where it is a little bit more serious. It's a little bit more kind of sophisticated kind of thing. And it gives him a chance to really showcase his acting chops and to show that he's not just a comedy actor. He's capable of more. So,
and Ghosted was 2017. And guess who his wife was in Ghosted? Britt Lauer.
No shit. He's worked with Britt Lauer before.
Yes,
wow.
Yes.
Oh, wow. Interesting.
Yep.
Interesting. Nice. But there it is, guys. Episode 5 is in the books. We now look ahead to episode 6, which is just a few days away now. And of course, again, this Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern, 1 hour before the episode loads up on Apple Plus, we will be live right here on the channel for a pregame show. And then, of course, Saturday again at 9 p.m. Eastern, you can also catch PM and I diving into all things episode 6. And then again, 1 week from tonight, right here on Tuesday, again, you can catch Raver and I diving into episode 6 and previewing episode 7. And I look forward to seeing where the rest of the season goes.
Don't forget Friday night for those of us.
Friday night, that is right. Friday night in the Discord, not on YouTube, but Friday night in the Discord. Anybody who wants to join the Severance watch party, Ravener will be hosting a Severance watch party directly in the Discord every Friday night at 9 p.m. Eastern, where we will always be watching the latest episode of Severance. So if you guys don't have a chance to see episode 6, or if you don't have Apple Plus, or whatever the case may be, you can always join us in the Discord every Friday night, 9 p.m. Eastern, for our Severance watch party. First one was fun. It was a great success.
Yeah, and spirited discussion after the episode also, which is super cool. But yeah, man, it was fun, and I appreciated you because I didn't super advertise it, but this time I will. I'll probably send out notifications. I'll notify people about a half hour ahead of time. The links are in the chat. Both PM and I posted links to that. So yeah, feel free to drop in. I didn't want to step on Apple's feet, step on their toes and fall afoul of them. But yeah, for those of us who don't get a hold of it, and you'll still want to be up to date for Saturday's show, so we'll be able to watch the show on Friday night, 9 p.m. Eastern every week until the season's over.
Indeed. And of course, the results of our poll. That's right. I totally forgot. We had a poll going throughout tonight's stream, asking you guys in the chat, should Mark have told Helly about what happened in the tent? And 70% of you said, yes, Mark should have come clean. Awesome stuff. And I do agree. Mark should come clean. He needs to tell Helly what happened in the tent. So I do agree with the majority in this night, but always interesting to get the chat's feedback. Always interesting to hear your guys' opinion on everything that we talk about here. And I love all the feedback that we do get. But there it is, guys. That is going to do it for us tonight on the Severance Hour. And again, join us this Thursday, 8 p.m. Eastern for the pregame show, then Friday for the watch party, then Saturday for the deep dive as we continue this crazy road that is Severance Season 2. And until next time, folks, keep those tinfoil hats on, and we will see you on the next one.